For a second, I couldn't even breathe. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. I looked down at the ticket again, like it might have changed in the last 5 seconds. Like maybe I imagined the numbers lining up, the matching sequence, the tiny printed confirmation that didn't feel real. My reflection in the windshield looked pale, almost unfamiliar, like I was watching someone else sit there holding something explosive. My phone buzzed again in my lap. Mom, again. Then another call stacked on top of it, and another. I declined it this time, my thumb hovering just a second longer than it should have. Because the way Dad said it, we need to talk about the ticket. It wasn't curious. It wasn't confused. They already knew, and that didn't make sense. I hadn't told Lydia. I hadn't posted anything. I hadn't even left this parking lot since I checked the numbers against the app and watched the confirmation screen freeze for half a second before refreshing with that number, $180 million, like it was nothing. A pickup truck rolled past my car slowly, bass thumping through its speakers, snapping me out of it. Everything else in the world was still moving like normal. Mine wasn't. I leaned back into the seat, closing my eyes for just a second, and that's when it hit me again. Christmas morning. Lydia screaming in the driveway, jumping into Mom's arms while Dad filmed everything on his phone like it was some big moment worth saving. The car sitting there, polished, ribbons still taped across the hood. And me, standing in the living room, holding a pair of socks that didn't even fit. I let out a quiet laugh, but it didn't sound like anything close to humor, because now they were calling me like I mattered. My phone buzzed again. This time, a voicemail auto-played through the Bluetooth. Dad's voice, tighter now. "Elara, don't ignore this. This affects all of us." I sat up straight. All of us? My eyes dropped back to the ticket in my hand, and for the first time, a different question started forming, one that felt a lot worse than the money. What exactly did they think I owed them? They didn't just start treating me differently yesterday. I started the car, but I didn't pull out of the parking spot. The engine hummed under me while my phone kept lighting up, vibrating against the console like it had a life of its own. I flipped it face down this time, because if I answered again, I already knew what I'd hear, and I wasn't ready for it. Whatever this was, it didn't come out of nowhere. Growing up, it had always been Lydia first. Not in an obvious, cartoonish way. It was quieter than that, more polished, easier to deny if you weren't the one living inside it. Lydia messed up? She's just figuring herself out. I struggled? Well, you've always been the responsible one. I stared out at the empty road ahead of me, remembering the way my mom said that, like it was a compliment instead of a dismissal. Lydia crashed her first car at 19, totaled it, walked away laughing, telling the story at dinner like it was a joke. My parents replaced it within a week. When I needed help covering rent at 21 after my job cut hours, my dad leaned back in his chair and said, "You'll figure it out. You always do." And I did. 2 jobs, late nights, no backup plan, but a year later when my parents were suddenly short on money, some unexpected expense they didn't fully explain, I wired them $3,000 without asking questions. They said they'd pay me back. They never did. The buzzing started again. I glanced down. Lydia this time. Of course. I let it ring out, but a text came through immediately after. Lydia. "Okay, what is going on?" "Mom is freaking out." Another one. "Did you seriously not tell us?" My jaw tightened. Tell you what? I hadn't even said the words out loud yet. Not to anyone. Not even to myself in a full sentence. It still felt like if I spoke it, something would collapse. I reached for the ticket again, smoothing it out against my knee. The numbers didn't change. Still real. Still mine. And yet somehow, not private anymore. That's what didn't sit right. I finally put the car in reverse, pulling out slowly, my mind racing ahead of me. If they knew, then something had already moved without me. Something I didn't see. Something I didn't control. And that bothered me more than anything else. By the time I got back to my apartment, My phone had died from the constant calls. The silence when I stepped out of the car felt unnatural, like the world had paused just long enough to let something catch up to me. I barely made it to my door before I noticed it. An envelope, slid halfway under the frame, no stamp, no address, just my name written across the front in tight, familiar handwriting. My stomach dropped before I even picked it up, because I recognized it immediately, my dad's. I pushed the door open, like stepping inside quickly and locking it behind me before tearing the envelope open with my thumb. A single sheet of paper. Folded once. I opened it, and the first line made my chest tighten. "We need to have a serious conversation about your financial situation." I read it again, slower this time. Not the ticket, not congratulations, not even a question. My financial situation. I let out a breath, sharp and quiet. Because suddenly, the calls, the panic, the way they said this affects all of us. It wasn't about me. It was about what they thought they could take. My phone flickered back to life just enough to light up with one more incoming call. "Mom," I answered this time. There was no greeting, just her voice, low and controlled in a way that felt worse than panic. "Alara, don't make this harder than it needs to be." I went still, because that wasn't concern. That was a warning. I thought maybe they were just panicking, but I was wrong. I didn't respond to her right away. I just stood there in my apartment, the door still locked behind me, the letter crumpled slightly in my hand. "Make what harder?" I asked finally, keeping my voice even. There was a brief pause on the other end. Too brief, like she already had the answer ready. "This situation," she said. "You disappearing, not answering us, after something this big?" Something this big, so she did know. My grip tightened around the phone. "You mean the ticket?" Another pause. This one longer. Then she exhaled like we were finally being honest. "Yes, Alara, the ticket." I turned away, pacing slowly across my living room. How? That question came out sharper than I expected, because that was the part I couldn't shake. How did they find out? "We'll talk about that in person," she said quickly. "Your father and I are already on our way. We just want to sit down as a family and figure out next steps." Next steps. Like this was a group project. "No," I said immediately. Silence. Then, "No?" she repeated. "I'm not doing anything until I understand what's going on," I said. "You don't just show up here and start talking about my financial situation like it belongs to you." Her tone shifted again. Firmer now. "Alara, you're not thinking clearly. This kind of money is mine," I cut in. The words landed heavier than I expected. Not loud, not emotional, just final. On the other end, I heard movement, muffled voices. My dad, in the background. Then he took the phone. "Alara," he said, his voice lower, more controlled. "We're trying to help you." I almost laughed. "Help me," I said. "You gave Lydia a car yesterday and handed me socks." "That's not the same thing," he snapped. "No," I agreed quietly. "It's not." There was a crack in the conversation then, something real, something they couldn't smooth over with tone, and instead of backing off, he pushed. "You don't understand the position we're in," he said. "There are things you don't know." I stopped pacing. There it was, the first crack. "What things?" I asked, but he didn't answer that. Instead, he said, "We've made certain financial decisions as a family." "No," I cut in again, sharper this time. "You made decisions. I wasn't part of them." Another silence. Then Lydia's voice suddenly broke through in the background, louder, less controlled. "Just tell her," she snapped. "She already knows about the money. What's the point of hiding it now?" My chest tightened. Hiding what? The line shifted again. Movement, tension. And then my mom came back on. "Alara," she said, her voice softer again, almost pleading now. "We need to fix this before it gets worse." "Before what gets worse?" I asked. And this time, she answered. "Before we lose the house." Everything in me went still. The room, the noise, the pressure gone. replaced by one sharp, sinking realization. This wasn't about celebration. This wasn't even about favoritism anymore. This was about something already collapsing, and them reaching for me to stop it. I looked down at the ticket still in my hand. $180 million. And suddenly, it didn't feel like luck. It felt like leverage. "Come over," my dad said, cutting back in, his tone now firm again. "We'll explain everything. We'll handle this the right way." Handle. We. I closed my eyes for a second, then opened them. "No," I said again. This time I meant it differently, because now I understood something I didn't before. They weren't calling because they cared. They were calling because they needed something, and I hadn't even seen the full picture yet. My phone buzzed again as the call dropped. A new message came through. Not from them, from an unknown number, just one line. "Check the will." My stomach dropped, because there was only one will I knew about, and I hadn't looked at it in years. I hadn't thought about that document in years, and suddenly it was all that mattered. I didn't sit down. I didn't even take my coat off. I went straight to the small metal filing box in the corner of my bedroom, the one I barely touched unless I needed something official. Lease papers, old tax returns, things that only mattered when they had to. My hands moved faster than my thoughts, flipping through folders until I found it. Family documents. I pulled it out, already feeling that tight pressure building in my chest again. Because if someone told me to check the will, they knew something I didn't. I unfolded the papers carefully, smoothing them across my kitchen counter. The document was dated 3 years ago, right around the time my parents had that financial dip they never fully explained. I started scanning. Names, and assets, distribution. At first it looked standard, until I reached the section that mattered. I slowed down, read it again, then a third time. Lydia Quinn, primary beneficiary. Lydia Quinn, property rights. Lydia Quinn, majority control of all remaining assets. My name wasn't there. Not as a secondary, not as a percentage, not even mentioned. Just gone. I leaned back slightly, one hand gripping the edge of the counter to steady myself. Not because it was shocking, but because it confirmed something I'd spent years trying not to say out loud. This wasn't accidental. This wasn't oversight. This was intentional. And suddenly, everything from yesterday, those socks, the forced smile, the way they watched me open that box like they were waiting for something, it all snapped into place. They didn't see me as someone to invest in. They saw me as someone to rely on, someone who would show up when things fell apart. My phone buzzed again, dragging me back. I looked down. Another unknown number, then another, and another. Different area codes, different contacts. My chest tightened. This wasn't just them anymore. I answered one before I could stop myself. "Hello?" A man's voice, professional, unfamiliar. "Hi, is this Alara Quinn? I'm calling regarding your recent lottery claim." I hung up immediately. My pulse spiked. So that's how. It wasn't contained. It wasn't private anymore. Somewhere between verification, processing, or someone talking when they shouldn't have, my name had started circulating, and if strangers could find me, of course my family could. A loud knock hit my door. Sharp, immediate. Not hesitant. I froze. Another knock. Harder this time. "Alara, open the door!" My dad. Too fast. They weren't on their way. They were already here. I stepped slowly toward the door, every instinct telling me not to open it, but something stronger pulling me closer. Not curiosity, clarity. I unlocked it, but didn't open it all the way, just enough to see them, both of them standing there. My mom's face tight, controlled. My dad's jaw set, eyes already scanning past me, like he was looking for something inside. Neither of them looked surprised. Neither of them looked happy. They looked urgent. "You got our messages," my mom said. Not a question. I didn't answer. My dad stepped forward slightly, lowering his voice. "We don't have time to do this back and forth," he said. "Things are already in motion." "In motion?" I repeated. He exhaled like I was being difficult. The bank, he said. The house. We're behind, Alara, more than you think. There it was again. Not we missed you. Not we're worried about you. Just pressure, need, expectation. My eyes flicked between them, then back to my dad. And what does that have to do with me? I asked. He didn't hesitate. Everything. The word landed flat, certain, like it had always been the plan. Behind him, Lydia stepped into view from the hallway, phone in hand, watching me like she was waiting for something to play out. No excitement, no smugness, just anticipation. And in that moment, standing there with the will still open behind me, the ticket still in my pocket, and all three of them looking at me like I was the solution, I understood exactly where I stood, not as family, not as equal, as leverage. My dad took another step closer to the door. "We need to come inside," he said. I didn't move, because something in his tone told me, if I let them in, I wouldn't be in control of this anymore. I already knew what they wanted, I just needed to hear them say it. I didn't open the door any wider. We stood there like that, me on one side, them on the other, separated by a few inches of wood and everything that had finally become clear. "Say it," I said. My dad frowned slightly. "Say what?" "What you actually came here for." A brief silence passed between them. My mom glanced at Lydia, then back at me, like they were silently deciding how honest they were willing to be. It was Lydia who broke first. "Oh my God, Alara, stop acting like this is complicated," she said, stepping forward. "You won. We're in trouble. You help. That's it." Just like that. Flat, simple, assumed. I let out a slow breath, nodding once, not in agreement, just in acknowledgement. There it is. My dad's expression hardened. "We are your family." "And I was yours yesterday too," I said, "when you gave her a car and handed me socks." "That has nothing to do with this," he snapped. "It has everything to do with this." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Because yesterday showed me exactly where I stand when there's not a crisis. That landed. I saw it in the way my mom's face tightened, the way Lydia looked away for half a second. But it didn't stop them. "We made mistakes," my mom said quickly. "Okay, fine. But this is bigger than that. We're talking about losing the house. Your father's business is tied into it. There are loans." "I know," I said, cutting her off. They all paused. "I read the will." That changed the air completely. My dad's jaw tightened. Lydia went still. My mom tried to recover first. "Alara, that was drafted years ago. And I wasn't in it," I said. No emotion, just fact. Silence stretched across the doorway, because there wasn't a version of that they could soften. "You planned your future without me," I continued, "but now that it's falling apart, suddenly I'm part of it again." "That's not fair," my dad said, but it came out weaker this time. "It's accurate." Another pause. Longer now, then finally he dropped the last layer. "We're going to lose everything," he said. "Unless you help." There it was. Not can you, not would you, just unless you help. I looked at each of them, really looked this time, not as my family, not as people I owed something to, just as they were, desperate, expecting, certain I would say yes. I reached into my coat pocket slowly and pulled out the ticket, holding it between my fingers. For a second, all three of their eyes locked onto it at once. That told me everything. "I'm going to take care of my future," I said. My mom's face shifted immediately. "Alara, but I'm not fixing yours." The silence that followed wasn't loud. It was heavy. My dad straightened, something colder settling into his expression. "You're really going to walk away from your own family over money?" I shook my head slightly. "No," I said. "I'm walking away because of everything that came before the money." That was the part they couldn't argue, because it had already happened. I stepped back, pulling the door closer. My mom's voice cracked slightly. "If you do this, there's no coming back from it." I met her eyes. "I know." And then I closed the door. The next few months moved fast. faster than anything in my life ever had. Lawyers, financial advisors, security, paperwork. I didn't fully understand at first, but learned quickly because I had to. I claimed the money anonymously, built layers between me and anyone who thought they had access to it, including them. They tried at first, calls, emails, messages from relatives I hadn't heard from in years suddenly checking in. Lydia even showed up once, alone, softer this time, less confident. I didn't open the door. Eventually, it stopped. Not all at once, but gradually, like something running out of energy. I heard about the house months later, from someone else, not them. Foreclosure, quiet, final. My dad's business didn't survive it either. Too much tied into too many things that depended on each other. Lydia, I didn't hear much after that. Just fragments, jobs that didn't stick, a move, another move, nothing stable. And for the first time, I wasn't the one expected to step in. A year later, my life looked nothing like it used to. Not louder, not flashier, just controlled. A house that was mine. Quiet mornings. Decisions that didn't involve anyone else's expectations. No pressure, no assumptions, just space. One afternoon, I was going through a drawer, organizing things I hadn't touched since the move, and I found them again. The socks, still folded, still unworn. I held them for a second, turning them over in my hands. Same cheap fabric, same wrong size. I almost threw them out, but I didn't. I placed them back in the drawer instead, closing it gently. Not as something I needed, just as something I understood now. Because that moment, standing there on Christmas morning, holding those socks while everything else happened around me, that was the last time they got to decide what I was worth. And the strangest part? They never gave me anything after that, not even the chance.